Hey, Logan here. I don't normally do equipment reviews, but I wanted to put together a video comparing three different microphones that I have and I have been using recently. Each of these I have gotten for different reasons and used in different scenarios. So the three microphones are the Shure MV5, which is a USB condenser microphone, the Presonus Revelator Dynamic, which is also a USB microphone, but it's a dynamic microphone, not a condenser, and the PD70, which is just a straight bare bones dynamic microphone. Now, the PD70 and the Revelator Dynamic are supposedly roughly the same mic on the front end as far as the microphone part. The difference is with the Revelator Dynamic, it's a USB mic, so they have a preamplifier built in there. Everything else with the PD70, you're going to need an XLR cable and an audio interface to get that into your PC. And then I also use a FET amplifier just because it needs a lot of gain, more than it's able to cleanly get out of my audio interface. Start with a quick review of the Shure MV5. This is a small microphone. It's about $99 on Amazon. And the nice thing about this microphone is that out of the box, it works well with a computer. You can use it with your iPhone. It comes with a USB cable. You can see on the back, it's a USB micro connector, but it comes with two cables. One is a regular USB port, and one is a Lightning connector, so you can connect that directly to your iPhone. It also has a headphone jack for monitoring on it. Now, this is a condenser microphone, which means it's a little more sensitive than the other two dynamic microphones that I have. So if you're in a room that isn't well treated, or if you have lots of backup ground noise, you'll hear that bleed in more than you will in the other microphones. They probably heard my canary in the other room singing a little bit. This is my PD70 setup I have. Not much I can do to get rid of the bird. At least it wouldn't get me in trouble with the wife. So, this microphone I initially bought because it is relatively small. You can see it compared to the Revelator Dynamic microphone. It's fairly small. The box isn't that large, and I travel a fair amount for work. So this is very easy to throw in my suitcase and travel with it. I'll do a sound comparison on it later on. You can hear the amount of ambient noise it picks up is going to be probably in the middle of the two. It's a little bit less than the Dynamic Revelator, just because I think the preamp on it's a fair bit cleaner. Now, one thing I will note, uh, the reason I ended up buying the Dynamic Revelator microphone is because this microphone, the Shure MV5, failed on me. I started having recordings where I was getting all kinds of digital glitching and things. Something was broken inside, and so the audio coming out was garbage and not really usable. But Shure does have a great 2-year warranty. I was able to set up a request, send the microphone in. I had to pay for shipping. It's like 9 or 10 bucks. And a couple weeks later, this being a low cost enough microphone, they didn't bother repairing it. They just sent me a brand new one. And so far seems to be working great. Just to dig a little bit into the specifications on this microphone, you can see it does have a cardioid pattern, meaning it has rejection from the rear and the sides, and you want to talk mostly in front of it. So if you're positioning it such that you're trying to eliminate a noise source in the room, like the fans of a computer or an air conditioning unit, in my case, in a hotel room, you want to set the back of the microphone pointing that way. And the frequency response on it is relatively flat-ish. You start to get a bump up above 9 kilohertz, but for the most part, it's relatively flat. Now, this microphone does have three different modes. It has a basic mode, a voice mode, and an instrument mode. The basic mode has no processing on it and not a lot of gain, so you need to do quite a bit of boost on that in post processing if you're going to use it that way. The voice mode I typically use, it has some gain, a de-esser, a little bit of compression, and EQ on it, just really, really lightly touching things. But it comes out with a signal that pretty much you can use other than wanting to do some ambient noise cleanup. There goes that canary again. And then the instrument mode, I don't play with a lot, but it's designed more for picking up instruments if you're trying to record a guitar or something like that. The biggest downside for me of this microphone, other than being a condenser, I prefer to use the dynamics just because I'm often in rooms that are only so treated or in hotel rooms and other things. But really, it's the mic stand that comes with it. It's great because it's small. It makes it a small package and easy to travel with, but then it's not usually high enough to where it works right out of the box for me. Whereas if you look at it compared to the stand on the Revelator dynamic microphone, that stand puts the microphone considerably higher and you've got a little bit of control as to where it's pointing. And usually that works well enough if I'm taking it to travel. Now that you've seen them side by side, let's talk a little bit about the Presonus Revelator dynamic microphone. If you look on the back, you can see the connections are pretty similar to that of the MV5, but it has a Type-C connection instead of a micro USB. So it's an upgrade from there. Now, this microphone is about twice the cost. It's about $199 on Amazon right now. Looking at the specifications for this microphone, it is pretty similar to the Shure MV5 in that it's a cardioid pattern on the front. The frequency response is about 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. They don't give us a plot, but they tell us it's supposed to be plus or minus 3 dB in that range, so relatively flat. Now, the power of this microphone isn't so much in the specifications that it has, and I've talked about it. My biggest complaint with this microphone is the amount of noise that comes out of the preamplifier on it by default. You'll have to do some kind of cleanup on that, really to make your audio usable. But really, it's the software. You have a lot of control over how your microphone is going to behave. It has 4 different presets that you can load in to it, controlling everything through a fat channel for a low pass filter, a compressor, a noise gate, EQ, a limiter, and then different types of voice effects like reverb and things like that. So I'm going to show a short clip using the Universal Control software where I am recording the audio specifically through the Revelator dynamic microphone. I'll note I did go through and do a little bit of cleanup on the audio to remove the background with RX9. This is the Universal Control software panel for the Revelator dynamic microphone. And it comes preset with a couple of the broadcast settings. I didn't particularly like those for my own usage. The biggest problem I had with it, again, is just the noise that comes out of the preamp on this thing. So I found my own presets to use where essentially, and I set this for every button to be the same, just so it doesn't matter how it powers up when I take this microphone. I have this set up on my tablet, but then I can take the microphone and plug it into any other device and it'll keep the settings I have on here. And I just set them all the same, so it doesn't matter what mode I accidentally hit. I won't be in some different mode than I think I'm in. With the fat channel, this is basically what I have. I have the high pass filter turned on. I have the noise gate turned off just because to really get a clean signal out of this, you're going to need to do some post-processing cleanup. Now, if you're recording using software like Zoom or Zencaster that I use for podcast recording or Teams or something like that, or even over Discord, typically that's going to do some kind of noise reduction for you, and that may take care of the noise coming out of there. And if that's the case, you want to use a noise gate, that's probably fine. For the most part, where I use this, though, I'm going to be doing some cleanup afterwards, so I have that turned off. At the end of the day, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. The key filter is kind of nice. You can set it up to where it'll ignore, like if you're typing it on your keyboard and that kind of thing, if you are using the gate. Compression I left pretty mild. EQ I left pretty mild with a low roll off. I don't use a limiter, and the voice functions are just for kinds of funky noises. If you want to do silly voices, I guess that's an option on how to do that. That's basically what I have set up for my presets for everything on this. And there's other videos that go through really how to set these up to get a pretty good response if you'd like to look into that. This is the universal control for the Revelator dynamic microphone. Now, one of the big pitches for the Revelator dynamic microphone is that it is based off of the Presonus PD70. You can see side by side here, they look pretty similar in size. You take the pop filters off, and again, they're pretty close to the same size. Not exactly the same. The Revelator Dynamic is a little bit smaller. It's longer because it's got the extra electronics built into it. Weight-wise, though, the PD70 is actually noticeably heavier than the Revelator dynamic microphone. Last, let's talk about the Presonus PD70 dynamic microphone. Now, this is just a bare bones dynamic microphone. So you're not able to use it by itself. All it has on the rear is an XLR connection. So you're going to need to run that through an audio interface. Now I'm running that through a fathead amplifier, and then I'm using a Presonus Studio 24C audio interface, although there's multiple types of interfaces you can use. And I got the fathead amplifier just because I didn't get enough clean boost for this microphone out of the Presonus Studio 24C. And even after all of that, I still end up running this through Reaper with an effects chain where I'm adding about 12 dB of gain on it. So your total setup cost here is quite a bit more than the other microphones. The PD70 itself is about $130. The fathead amplifier that I'm using Right now it's about $90. I paid less than that. You see some people like to use cloud lifters as well as an inline amplifier for a lot of these microphones. The Studio 24C audio interface I'm using is about 160 bucks on Amazon. Granted, there's cheaper options for that as well. That just happens to be what I'm using. But those three combinations, if you're to buy them today, is about 380 bucks. So once again, your cost here is quite a bit higher than just the Revelator dynamic microphone. Now looking at the specs of this microphone, again, it's a cardioid pattern, relatively flat response. It's got a little bit more peaking on the high end when you go up around, again, around that 9 kilohertz range. Pretty close match to what we see with the other microphones. Now I also have this on a nice boom arm in my office. It doesn't travel with me because I can't move the whole setup. So it pretty much stays put in my office, and this is what I use when I'm at home. Now, the real question is, how do these microphones sound in comparison to each other? So let's see. Let's do a quick recording with each and see how they sound side by side. This is the Shure MV5 microphone in voice mode, and I'm talking about 2 inches from the microphone. This is the Shure MV5 microphone, and I am talking about 12 inches away from the microphone. Again, using voice mode. This is the Presonus Revelator dynamic microphone, talking about 2 inches from the microphone. And this is the Presonus Revelator dynamic microphone, talking about a foot away from the microphone. And last, this is the PD70 microphone running through a FET amplifier and into a Presonus Studio 24C USB audio interface. It's turned about 3/4 of the way up on the gain on the input channel, and then I run this through Reaper where I can apply noise gate. That's turned off for this at the moment, but that's also adding about another 12 dB of gain. And here I am talking about 1 inch away from the microphone. And here is that same PD70 microphone, exact same setup, and I'm about 12 inches away from the microphone here. All right, there you have it, completely unfiltered, raw audio captured from all three of those microphones. You could see, since I had the split view on there in Audacity, just playing that waveform file, the Shure MV5 condenser microphone, while the lowest cost, also is picking up the most room or most audio or noise from the room and background noise. The Revelator Dynamic had a lot less noise it was picking up from the just ambient noise in the room. The noise that was coming from it was just noise out of the preamplifier itself. And then the PD70, which to my ears is the cleanest and crispest of the three, obviously the most expensive setup that I have. But looking at that, there's not a whole lot of cleanup work that needs to be done on that to get usable audio. With the other two microphones, definitely need to go through and take a pass of some kind of spectral cleanup of the audio, either in Audacity or RX9 or whatever tool that you like to use to do your cleanup. So there you have it. Which microphone did you like the best? Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.